had guts for city life, fumes, people, university and all that stuff. I just wanted to be a place where I could be alone, have my own thoughts, and make things. Pottery, do some writing, reading, writing particularly, as well as making pots. And I wanted to lead a comparatively solitary lifestyle, all that space a place like Coromandel could offer you.
Barry's eccentric vision became possible back in 1961, following his resignation as a schoolteacher, then moving into a colonial cowrie house which he restored. Passionate about making pots and fascinated with trains, he built a narrow-gauge railway to convey materials to his pottery. Very soon, Barry had become New Zealand's first Kiwi-born full-time potter. In this new world he'd made for himself, Barry could indulge his pioneering spirit and a fascination with fire, clay, railways and native plants of New Zealand. Coromandel was an ideal place for a young recluse, isolated yet not too far away from Auckland where he could sell his pots. But after living as a potter for 13 years on his 1-acre property, Barry began to feel hemmed in. So, in 1973, he bought 60 acres up the road. Starting from nothing, he had a vision of what could be created on this scrub-covered hillside. He wanted to set up a major pottery workshop where artists could work as a cooperative to establish a real Kiwi pottery tradition based on using local clays. But this was no hands-off ivory tower dream. His vision was passionate and dedicated to a lifetime of hard work to revegetate the hills with native forest and build a major narrow-gauge railway up through the hills. A threefold vision: art, conservation, engineering, the driving themes at Driving Creek. Some people said Barry would never stop laying rails up the hill. The railway was built to bring pine wood and clay down to the pottery, and Barry never dreamt it would become such a major tourist operation. Old rails are even used to help load a new kiln. But while Barry accepts that he's infatuated with the challenges of civil engineering, he's also become involved in another quite different venture.
I've always had a soft spot for native ecology, plants and trees and mosses and ferns and liverworts and things. This country is just magic in terms of its botany and its zoology, what's more.
Barry established the Wildlife Sanctuary as a trust in 1999 over a section of his land situated below the pottery. Earthworks to dam a stream and form a lake and wetland area transformed a farm paddock into a potential habitat for endangered native species, from birds, lizards, frogs and fish down to insects. It was a daunting task, starting from nothing like many of Barry's huge projects. Eventually, with the completion of a vermin-proof fence, Barry wants to raise kiwi here, And with the abundant planting of harakeke, the native flax, the sanctuary is already becoming popular with local tui. The endangered native brown teal duck, pateke, has adopted the sanctuary lake. Along with increasing numbers of wood pigeons and bellbirds, a pair of pateke flew in and have been breeding here ever since, all adding to the activity in the sanctuary. Barry's had a lifelong admiration for the native forest which once covered the Coromandel Peninsula, and he's planted thousands of new trees at Driving Creek to restore the forests. Because he won't live long enough to see them mature, he's created his own 10-metre-tall ceramic kauri tree to enjoy in the meantime, an enduring symbol of his dedication to native ecology. In due course, rata and other native shrubs which have been planted in the bowl at the top will one day grow up. A tribute to the kauri. Barry already has plenty of reason to be pleased about what he's achieved. Now, after more than 30 years, the vision is being fulfilled. Over 20,000 native trees and shrubs have been planted, and it's hard to imagine the former barren landscape.
All I had in the way of kauri on my land was charred, rotting stumps of old kauris, which you can see to this day underneath the scrub.
The gold miners were blamed for despoiling the Coromandel Peninsula, but it was really 100 years of farming that destroyed the forest. Kauri is one of the world's finest trees and can live for thousands of years. Walking around this reserve near Coromandel, Barry could be his ghost returning to Driving Creek in the future. Barry's planted thousands of native trees, hoping to repair the damage done by earlier generations. When he's buried, Barry hopes to be fertilizing a ring of native trees around his grave on his land.
I've never lost touch with the earth in my country. This is why I'm making this thing right now. It's rough, local clay, and it's got sand in it. And a lot of people poo-poo that. I think it's old-fashioned and out of style, out of fashion to dig your own clay, do things your own way.
Studies of geology showed there should be a great variety of good clays around Coromandel. This yellow clay will be mixed with local sand and put through the pug mill. Then it'll be used for making terracotta sculptures, plant pots, tiles and bricks. When Barry was surveying the railway route, several deposits of plastic clay were found. Transporting the clay is the easy part. It's all downhill on a 1 in 30 gradient. The Brickell initials are BB, the same as a class of steam locomotive used for shunting on the old New Zealand government railways. So when Barry moves wagons around, he becomes a puffing BB engine with a full head of steam. The engineering workshop behind the potteries is integral to smooth and safe operations on the driving Creek Railway. Barry's staff manage facilities and machinery that are geared for all types of work, from daily maintenance and running repairs to the construction of all rolling stock which safely carry the thousands of visitors over the line every year. Running trains over one of the world's steepest mountain railways, the workshop staff are always facing fresh engineering challenges and the need to come up with innovative solutions in the interests of safety. A characteristic of the driving Creek Railway is the many sharp curves along the line which cause wear on the wheel flanges. Barry and staff have been working to address this maintenance problem. Following this work, and with the opening of the Eiffel Tower, a unique new hydraulic-powered train called the Lynx has been built to help operate the service, especially during the busy summer months. Since he's been operating passenger services, Barry's observed mechanical wear and tear on the snake and possum trains, and he's incorporated radical design features in the new Lynx, which the possum is now towing up the line for a road test. Barry laughs at the likelihood of what he's created for his pioneering railway, but it's just possible that the Lynx is at the cutting edge of technology, the most sophisticated narrow-gauge train design running anywhere in the world. Barry's worked with overseas and local engineers on the design, and on test runs he's particularly keen to study if it works correctly. An Auckland company came up with a clever linkage system that maintains all 16 wheels normal to the rail, even on sharp curves. The design makes the bogies self-steering, reducing friction and flange wear. The Lynx is a truly elegant solution to a design challenge, right down to the bogies, where there are no axles, and hydraulic motors power each wheel. Barry's like a kid let loose in a lolly shop as he inspects the results. But although he's satisfied with the new Lynx, Barry's always happy when he's driving the faithful old Elephant, which goes back to the early days. Ever since he can remember, Barry's been fascinated by railways. But there's one special day which will always remain vivid in his mind. On the 3rd of March 1956, aged 20, Barry joined a tour along Ellis and Burnand's bush tramway in the King Country. It was an experience which would alter the entire course of his life. Here on this remote pioneer trail in the wilderness, amid the aroma of steam and hot oil, Barry's vision was kindled. As the aging Climax steam Loki headed its train into the bush, the genesis for the driving Creek Railway was born. But instead of timber milling exploitation, the railway which Barry would build in the future would be used for conservation. It would be many years before the vision of that far-off day would be realized, but the events always remained clear in his memory, as he recalled in a documentary a few years ago.
And we did 23 miles behind that engine. When it was blasting along at about 6 miles an hour, it sounded like a JA doing 60 miles an hour because of the gearing effect. On the way up they burnt coal in the loco, and on the way back they burnt wood. There were some spectacular viaducts. The big Mangatuki was the most spectacular I'd ever seen in timber. It was actually a very sophisticated design of viaduct. It was no ordinary trestle. It was fully decked and handrailed in a grand sweeping curve over a magnificent tree fern gully. The native forest was largely intact. Around that area, a lot of rimu and matai and kaikatia, very beautiful forest. Magnificent stuff that I didn't seem to touch for some reason.
Today, the driving Creek Railway is the only fully functioning example of a bush tramway in New Zealand. The line follows classic railway practice and follows gradients that permit loads to be delivered down the line safely. Pinewood to fire the pottery kilns and clay from line-side pits are the main freight traffic. While continuing to serve the potteries, a new role would offer itself for Barry's spectacular railway.
But by the time I got as far as a double-deck bridge, I began to think, oh, hell's teeth, this could be a major visitor attraction. There are so many engineering feats involved, it could be quite something.
Because of its rugged natural beauty, the Coromandel has become a tourist resort, and the introduction of a fast ferry service from Auckland has brought back the good old days of sea transport. Over 100 years ago, the fast paddle steamer Wakateri plied between Auckland and Thames. Barry's been trying to awaken interest in the building of a modern equivalent to bring tourists to Coromandel. It could be an international attraction.
As you came in, you probably saw a whole group of muscle boys tied together.
The days of horse and coach are long gone, but Barry hopes we can combine old and new technologies. Unlike other faster developing commercial centres on the peninsula, Coromandel Town has not changed so much with the passing of time. It values its heritage. It's this unsophisticated charm and the pervading reminder of history that still draws the visitor to Coromandel Town. Including, of course, a visit to the driving Creek Railway. Driving Creek is named after a driving dam erected in the valley here during the kauri milling days. Driving dams were an ingenious way of transporting felled kauri logs down from the hills to ships in Coromandel Harbour. Built in gullies, they were sturdy, elaborate structures, strong enough to hold back the lakes they created. Watching them in action was awesome. By the time the floodgates were released after several months, the weight of rising water and trapped logs was enormous. Shattering the silence, thousands of tons of water and logs swept away everything in their path. It was a destructive, spectacular process. Barry agrees that it was the only way the Bushmen could drive the logs down to the sea without a railway. But the resultant erosion clogged river estuaries with mud and silt. Barry never envisaged his railway becoming a major tourist attraction until 15 years after he started building it. As he pushed the rails up the hills, he gradually began to realize that the railway could pay its way through tourism and clear him of the huge debt it cost to build. Income's also generated from the shop, but it's the railway, not the pottery, that's the main source of income, the star attraction. Trains run right through the year, but summer is the busiest. Operating trains on a mountain railway with grades as steep as 1 in 14, safety is paramount. With every wheel driven and braked, the trains are of a sophisticated design. The bigger snake and lynx trains are the modern-day equivalent of the 16-wheeler bush lokies that used to chuff along bush trams on steep gradients. Before departure, passengers are given a talk about safety. The round journey takes about an hour, and as with all railways, safety procedures are strict.
A little bit about our railway as we head up the hill here. And it was built purely to bring clay and firewood down from the hillsides above us here.
Driving Creek offers visitors real pioneering railway experience amid a regenerating native forest. After crossing number 2 bridge, trains pass round the lower spiral, a sharp horseshoe curve. If you know where to look through the bush, you might see where you come from. With all the trees growing higher all the time, all around the tracks, some passengers are confused which way they're travelling, adding to the magic of the trip. Arriving at Ravington is one of the special features of the mountain railway.
My survey showed that I could not get to where I wanted to go in one straight line, so I put a zigzag section in.
Depending on which way you're going, the railway rises or falls 6 metres between Chipman's Junction at the top of the zigzag and Ravington below. Travelling down to Ravington, you can easily see how it works. Barry tried other routes, but the grade was too steep. Anyway, the zigzag is a feature of the railway. It's very popular with tourists and offers great camera opportunities. The zigzag was the only way they could build the highest railway in the world, and it was the Central Railway of Peru which fired Barry's imagination. It was an epic feat of engineering which took the line over 14,000 feet into the Andes in South America. It's commonly believed that the great age of railway construction now belongs to history, but Barry's been blazing away on his own in the heroic tradition of the Central Railway of Peru over a century later, here in Coromandel. However, Barry didn't need to look overseas when there were already exciting influences much closer to home.
I used to get around the country by rail. In those wonderful old days, goods trains with passenger car attached, they went all over the country so cheaply. And I had my sketch pad, and I examined carefully railway bridge construction, tunnel construction, and all these things. I thought, well, if they can do it, so can I, on a small scale. This is how I learnt to build this railway.
With New Zealand's rugged terrain, the impressive achievements of the pioneer railway engineers were an inspiration for Barry's do-it-yourself philosophy.
It's perfectly straightforward and very simple. You don't have to have gone to engineering school to design these sorts of structures. In fact, if you go to engineering school and get an engineering degree, you're bored stiff. You have the enthusiasm for engineering taken out of you. Eisenbart Kingdom Brunel, the great Victorian engineer, he never went to engineering school.
At Chipman's Junction, the line has risen 30 metres above the pottery. Gold diggers brought pine seeds here from California in the 1870s. Here, scattered pines grow like weeds, and they're cut down for kiln firing wood. Lots of native plants make the tunnel portals look 100 years old. The tunnels here began as cuttings first, then they were built over.
Just coming up on our right here, there's our little swamp with a couple of ferocious creatures in there. Just guarding our gorgeous mermaid.
By the time he got the line this far, Barry began to see the tourist potential, but it wasn't always appreciated.
I remember my father, my accountant, my bank manager, and many of my so-called friends were all accusing me of wasting this huge amount of money on this stupid miniature railway I was building. So I gritted my teeth and said nothing and carried on.
The double-decked viaduct, with a horseshoe spiral linking both levels, avoided the problem of another reversing point to gain height in this area. A hit with tourists, it took 2 years to build, and has become a hallmark of the driving Creek Railway. Before its construction, a crude swing bridge was slung across the gully to erect the heavy steel beams. All the bricks are homemade, and a lot of wine was drunk building this part of the railway. During the busy summer season, trains run up the hill nearly every hour of the day, and 2 trains are often needed at a time. Barry sometimes enjoys a chance to sit back and take the controls himself. Is there another bridge like this? I don't think so. Barry will always be proud of this bridge. Establishing a route with a line of pegs through the bush called for much trial and error.
So I had to go ahead and begin the survey all over again with my slasher and my instrument. Pull out the old pegs and put new ones in. Hours and hours and hours and hours I spent on the scrub up there in the bush with my slasher, trying to establish a route.
In 2003, a colossal rainstorm washed away the hillside between No. 2 Tunnel and the double-deck bridge. In true pioneer style, Barry and his team were determined to repair the washout as quickly as possible. With difficult access in the steep terrain, getting earth-moving machinery into the isolated gully was a challenge. But trains were operating again over the bridge within 4 weeks. The repairs required 2 new bridges and deep piles driven into the hillside. But Barry accepts that in spite of all the civil engineering expertise, there are occasions when nothing can be done to withstand the forces of Mother Nature. Beyond Hokimai, the midway point, the track runs round the hill on a 1 in 23 gradient above a deep gorge. At Cascade, the line reaches its 3rd reversing point. Here the driver changes ends on the zigzag from Cascade. 2 kilometres from the potteries and 40 metres above, it took Barry 20 years to get the railway this far.
This section of track takes us up to what used to be our old terminus. But when we get there, just stay seated, please.
This reversing point, number 4, was to have been the final terminus, reached in 1995.
And we head through our new tunnel and up to our new extension.
But after all the years of pushing the line onwards and upwards, Barry couldn't stop. The BB engine still had plenty of steam left in him, and 2 years later he decided to extend the railway all the way to the top of the ridge above.
That includes building the railway track, the original railway track. I need to do that. It's a pioneering thing in me. I have to build the fresh railway track all the time.
Barry was fortunate to obtain this good second-hand rail. His staff built this viaduct in 2000. It's the highest on the line. A gradient of 1 in 15 on this viaduct is very steep for a working railway. But the trains are fitted with sanding equipment, and there have been no problems with adhesion, even on wet rails. Barry's laid every inch of the track up here from the pottery, and his staff are being taught how to maintain it. In the evenings, track laying up the hill is helped by a bottle of red wine and some cheese, as usual wearing his Chinese safety sandals. Barry's always very particular about how each piece of track is laid and maintained. Driving Creek uses old rails from all round the country, a lot saved from old coal mines in the Waikato, and more recently, new light rail imported from Korea. The old loco, the Elephant, is now mainly used on work trains. Pushing his relentless way to the top of the ridge, Barry feels an affinity with an earlier group of railwaymen, the armies of navvies who toiled to break in the pioneer frontier. The instrument used to bend rails is called a Jim Crow. He's got very good at it over the years. His Jim Crow was used to bend rails a century ago. Although the pioneers weren't conservationists, Barry thinks he belongs back in that era, but with a conservation twist. Since December 2000, passengers have admired the terracotta tile murals that Barry commissioned. Eventually, all concrete work along the railway will be lined with these tiles and homemade bricks. Barry's passionate urge to forge on beyond the 1995 terminus had many people wondering if he would ever stop building his railway. Now, higher up the hill, passengers can begin to enjoy the wider views over Barry's estate and the great unfolding panorama beyond. If trains are still crossing the number 8 viaduct in 100 years' time, Barry's kauri trees will have grown tall enough to be part of this scene, just as they were in the ancient past. Barry reached the new number 5 terminus in 2001. It's a backshunt trestle built out into space. By now, his passengers could experience all the features of a mountain railway with its spectacular views. From here, Barry was poised for the final assault, the ultimate ridge and the last section of his line up to the Eiffel Tower. By the time the first passenger train reached the Eiffel Tower in 2003, Barry's railway had been 26 years in the making. Arrival at the Eiffel Tower is the culmination of a unique railway experience. For Barry, the opening of the Eiffel Tower at his hilltop terminus marked the end of the pioneering era and heralded a new phase of operations on the driving Creek Railway. Passengers might be surprised to learn that all the materials for the construction of the Eiffel Tower, which sits on 45 massive poles, were delivered up here by train. The historic Bean Rock Lighthouse at Auckland Harbour's entrance was Barry's inspiration for the Eiffel Tower. With its hexagonal, chapel-like character and sympathetic architecture blending with the landscape, the building's attracting favourable comments from visitors. The viewing platform offers an uncluttered vista over the treetops and beyond across the Great Hauraki Gulf, a view that's now become familiar in photo collections all around the world. With the back-breaking years of railway construction now behind him, Barry hopes he can fulfill other passions that have driven his life. As a full-time potter, artist and writer, and enjoy a lifestyle that a place like Coromandel can offer. Barry believes that New Zealand has a culture as interesting and vital as anywhere in the world, and as he enters the next phase of his life, he's determined to assert these values. Giving up teaching was the best decision Barry ever made in his life. The young man with the pioneering spirit who turned away from the everyday world and gave himself up to a fascination with native ecology, railways, the raw materials of the land, and an inspiration forged by the fire of an old bush locomotive on a long ago day. Now, over 45 years on, the creation of a young recluse has become a reality enjoyed by the thousands of visitors attracted each year to Driving Creek.
It was just great. Yes.
Oh yes, it was amazing, it was awesome, and our little son, he's somewhere around here, he thought it was just wonderful. Yeah, it's really awesome, beautiful.
That's been a lovely trip, lovely trip.
It's gorgeous and this train is amazing. It's amazing, also switchbacks and everything. I loved it.
Удивительно, как один человек построил такое количество железнодорожных путей и создал вообще такое уникальное место, очень красивое.
So I'm an engineer, and I was also in the mining business as well, so I recognise the track gauges and so on. I'm interested to know that it came from the coal mines, some of it.
It's most excellent, such a feat of engineering, exquisite views. It's just a real part of New Zealand.
Okay, I've never been on one like this. This is fun.
Yeah, the story was good. I enjoyed it. I can't believe that someone could do all of that by themselves.
I feel that Barry Brickell, what he's actually done for the area of the Coromandel, is just amazing. It's just an inspiration, really, just the hard work that he's put into it.
私はキキです。最近の旅行は楽しかったです。なんだっけ、竜とか。
For me, the best part was just driving through the forest and see it is amazing trees and pottery work.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, yeah, busier than New Zealand railways.
Little island off our coast is one of several nature reserves off the Coromandel west coast.
Today, the BB engine still has a full head of steam, but is now spending more time on less strenuous duties.
I want to be an artist for the rest of my life. At 71 years old, for goodness sake, my legs are packing up. I don't know why I've got the legs and arms left on me. They should have fallen off God knows how many years ago when I was building this railway. How many thousands of nuts and bolts have I done up? How many hundreds of truckloads of ballast and earth and clay have I moved? How many hours have I spent with the Jim Crow bending heavy rails? How many thousands of spikes, screws have I driven in? And let alone the surveying of the line in the first place. And fortunately I was in my 40s and 50s and 60s when building the railway. Now while I'm in my 70s, I just want to have a life of art.